Morning, everybody. Welcome to Perfect Day in Malibu with the ridiculously opulent Rolls Royce Spectre, Rolls Royce's first ever electric car. And while to me and a lot of others, it seems like pretty obvious that Rolls Royce should do electric cars. They're heavy anyway, they're torquey and silent anyway, they're not really road trip cars. People who have Rolls Royces charter jets when they go places. So they're never really going more than 300 miles in a day anyway. It seems obvious, but here it is, 10 years almost after Rolls Royce's Phantom concept electric car. And we're driving it. First things first, to close the door, you simply step on the brake pedal and the door comes to you. If you want to close the passenger door, there is a button for that. It is all quite delightful. But there's actually not a lot that's automated in the car. You have a start button, you get this sort of welcome chime, and all of the primary controls you may notice are physical buttons and knobs, most of which are made of metal and then wrapped in leather. I find that there's this sort of interesting bell curve of tech versus analog, where as the car gets more expensive, the tech piles on and piles on and piles on until you cross a certain threshold, and then the tech goes away because analog is actually more luxurious. For instance, if you have a very high-end BMW or Mercedes, call it 150 to 200,000, it'll be jam-packed with tech, screens everywhere, and all kinds of funky controls for stuff. And then when you go beyond that to Bentley, for example, you start to get some knobs back. You go beyond that to Rolls-Royce, $500,000, you start to get more knobs back and sliders and physical buttons for your radio presets, and oh, be still my heart. And then you go beyond that to Bugatti, and there's like no screen anymore. The more expensive the car, the more timeless they need the car to be, and timelessness means analog controls. That's just how it goes, and I actually love that. So in this video, we're going to find out, is this a great Rolls Royce, and is this a great electric car? In order to do so, we must drive it. So I'm going to put it in D and then press the B button for regenerative braking, and that is pretty much the only control I have over driving it. There are no drive modes. There's no sport mode. There's no suspension adjustments. There is one setting for drive and one setting for regenerative braking, which I like. Okay? Okay. And we waft away.
Guys, I am so excited to say that The Smoking Tire is back in the merch game. We have built a new merch store, easy checkout, easy shipping, very fair prices on everything. All of our new merch is super high quality. The materials, the fit, the durability, the print quality. Some of the items are based on cars I've owned or own with a Smoking Tire twist. Other stuff is more general enthusiasm, like this hoodie designed by Zach, and we're going to be adding new stuff every week. This first run of merch, super limited edition, only 50 units of each item. So head over to that merch store right now and get it while it lasts, and then keep checking back for regular merch drops from your buddies at The Smoking Tire. Now, enjoy today's video.
This car is inescapably enormous. It is 215 inches long. It is 61 inches high. It is the longest, tallest, and heaviest two-door car on sale today. Depending who you ask, it's between 6,300 and 6,700 pounds. And that is 300 to 600 pounds heavier than Rolls-Royce's own SUV, the Cullinan. In fact, it's 5 inches longer than the Cullinan as well. It splits the difference in length between a Chevy Tahoe and a Chevy Suburban. And that is ridiculous. 10% heavier than a Cullinan, and it's a 2-door coupe. Woof! Now, politically, I think that's bad. I don't think cars should be that heavy. I think it is wear and tear on the roads. It's taking up an enormous amount of space in parking lots, and those are what I believe. I think we should, as a society, be downsizing our cars. This is not really a mass market product, and so it's not like there's going to be a wave of Spectres taking over your local grocery store parking lot. If you see 1 or 2 of these a year, that's a lot. They don't make a lot. They're handmade in good wood, and they're so expensive and so bespoke that there's only so many they can make, okay? So, politically, bad. Also, there's something to be said about people who can afford $500,000 daily driver type cars, and that's a different story. But let's just talk about quality. This thing, all that weight comes from somewhere. So yes, there's a 102 kilowatt battery. Yes, there are dual electric motors that add up to 577 horsepower and 664 pound-feet of torque. But there is also a staggering amount of sound insulation, double paned glass. They shove it in the doors. They shove it everywhere it can be. And so the result is, at under about 80 miles an hour, the car is silent. Not just quiet, silent. Silent, silent, silent. Can't hear a thing. And interestingly, you'd think that because of that, the bespoke audio system would be like amazing. It's actually not. It's actually a very average stereo. I would expect that for this much money, you would get a mind-blowing audio experience, particularly with all the insulation they've got in here. But it's actually kind of average. That was disappointing. But the ride, the drive, it's like yachting. You are huge on the road. You cannot escape your hugeness on the road. And you're soft on the road. In fact, the Spectre has an ability to disconnect its own sway bars when you're going straight for a better ride, and then rapidly reconnecting them when you approach a corner so you can have some kind of handling. The 23-inch Pirelli P0 tires have these sort of aerodynamic wheel designs now, like a lot of electric cars do. I don't love how they look, and in fact, you get better range by about 40 miles if you only go with the 22s. You'd also get an even better ride. That extra inch of sidewall would make a difference here, because although the ride is incredible, there are some hard edges that you still do feel in the car that can only be the result of a very heavy car riding on some very serious rims. It's getting toasty in here, so I'm going to switch the airflow from soft to medium. I love that it's not even like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's soft, medium, high, maximum with these slider wheels that you can do cold up top and hot on the bottom, or vice versa. There's actually, even though this is a 2-door car, there's a 6-zone climate control system in here. And there's all kinds of other just incredible detail work. Whatever you think of the color combination of this car, which just should be said, I don't like very much, it is proof that you can do whatever you want and it will be assembled impeccably. The quality of the leather, the quality of the materials, the quality of the stitching, the quality of the carpeting, the quality of the chrome, it's unbelievable. It is second to none, and I have a lot of Bentley experience, and even by Bentley experience, it is just phenomenal. There's all these special testing they do with each individual car, the monsoon test, 100-mile road tests, acoustic tests, all this stuff they do with every car to make sure that it doesn't leave the factory unless it's perfect. U-turn and go back up the hill. One of my only, got rear steer, so even though it's huge, your turning radius is not as bad as one might expect. One thing that is kind of strange about this is every time you start the car or every time you put it in drive, for instance, if you make a 3-point turn, you have to re-engage one pedal driving. It's not a setting that you set once and then it stays that way, like my Ford or a lot of other cars. You have to do it every time you put the car into gear, which is surprising to me that they didn't make that a thing you could set and then forget, because that's just how you prefer to drive. You see, that Bentley just went the other way. They're poor by comparison. That's how this works. Don't get me wrong. I could very much get used to driving this car. The thing that I can't really get used to is being seen in it. I have this old Bentley, and I made a video about it. You should go watch it. I love it. It was cheap, relatively speaking. And I actually feel pretty cool in it. I feel like I know a secret that other people don't know. And if they knew it, they could get in on that game too. And this car, when I'm driving it, I feel like everyone's staring at me. Probably because they are. But when I drive a McLaren or a new Lamborghini or something for work, they all want to know how fast does it go, you know, what's the acceleration, what's the horsepower, stuff about the car. When you're driving this, they actually don't even care about the car. They want to know about you. Everybody becomes Daniel Mack. What do you do for a living? How did you get that money? Because they don't really need to know anything about this car beyond the fact that just looking at it, you can tell it is ridiculously expensive. Being expensive is its defining characteristic. And while some people look at you and are happy, other people glare at you like you own slaves, like you are a criminal, like there's no way you could do something legitimate and drive something like this. And I feel guilty just driving it. And I got to admit, I understand their perspective a little bit. It does feel shady. It does. It's nuts. You feel like an oligarch of some kind driving this. And maybe that's the point. Maybe that is the point, and I'm hating because I don't have one. But as a driver, as someone who likes to drive, the experience of driving and trying new stuff, I have to respect this because it is a totally unique motoring experience that I want everyone else to be able to experience. I made sure everyone at my staff at Westside Collector Car Storage and a couple of my friends got to try it just so they would know what it was like. Because you look at it, and even if you hate it, once you drive it, it does become charming in its own way. But everything I've just said, everything applies to basically all Rolls Royces, doesn't it? So, what about the fact that it's electric? Okay, you get between 250 and 290 miles, depending on the wheels, depending on how you drive. Now, that's not very much out of 102 kilowatt hours, right? But because this is 6,600 pounds and 577 horsepower with 664 pounds of torque. By the way, that power to weight ratio is identical to the GR Corolla I just drove. How about that? Of course, because you have instant electric torque, this does feel a little quicker when you just stomp the pedal, but that's about where your power to weight ratio is here in this car. The funny thing is that the actual experience of driving it is largely very similar to a gas-powered Rolls Royce. Those cars are so smooth, they are so quiet. Oh, that was my client with a Aston Martin Virage. He stores his car with me. Because those gas-powered Rolls Royces are so quiet, so refined anyway with their V12 engines, the leap to electric is actually quite incremental. It's way, way different than going from a Kia Sportage to an EV6, or a Hyundai Sonata to an Ioniq 5, or a Ford Mustang to a Mustang Mach-E. That is a massive leap forward in refinement, whereas this is not. It's an incremental leap forward in refinement. So when people say, oh my God, an electric Rolls Royce, what's that like to drive? If I'm honest, it's almost exactly like driving a gas-powered one, other than the one-pedal drive. Other than that, it's the same exact vibe. So is that good or is that bad? Well, on the one hand, Rolls-Royce has made an electric car that is true to their mission. It drives exactly like you expect a Rolls-Royce to drive. On the other hand, does that take full advantage of the medium? Well, I don't know. It certainly limits your ability to go on road trips because, trust me, you do not want to be sitting at public chargers with this thing with everyone side-eyeing you in their Model 3s and their Ioniq 5s. Nope. I don't like parking this thing in public. It makes me shifty. You know what I mean? And suspicious. And so you really want to be charging it at home. It has a 22 kilowatt onboard charger, which means pretty much any level 2 you can install in your house will charge this thing pretty fast. But it's not exactly a road trip car. It's an electric Rolls Royce. I mean, I know that seems like a cop-out, but it's everything I expect from an electric Rolls Royce and everything I expect from a regular Rolls Royce, and some of the drawbacks that go with that as well. Other than having to press this, there's no frunk. I mean, that's full of batteries and stuff up there. So you actually don't have the packaging advantages. You do have the big floor. That's why this thing is so tall. So it's a very interesting vehicle. I've enjoyed a lot about driving it and learning about it, but I also feel really self-conscious and I want to give it back and go back to normal cars. Finally, I will say one thing that they have done before we get out of here that is incredibly impressive is the drag coefficient of this car is 0.25. That is so slippery. For a big car like this that still looks like you expect a Rolls Royce to look, that is really, really slippery. And so their aerodynamicists have done a phenomenal job with that. Thank you to Rolls Royce for letting me have a go today. Thanks to all of you guys for watching, and I'll see you later.
And remember, always fight your tickets on the Off the Record app available in the Android and iOS store, or go to offtherecord.com/TST.